Hey, we're going to take a few minutes today and walk through the borrower application process for this either first draw or second draw loan, this next round of PPP lending. So we're highlighting the platform that your lender has invested in to try to make this process smoother and easier for the borrower through this process. We're going to spend the time walking through different data elements in the application, what's required, the supporting documents, and really the entire process and procedure. So at this point, you would have registered in the platform to use an email and a password and been able to get into this landing page in the application. So just a few highlight sections here. You can always come and save the application at any time. If you need to exit the application without finishing and submitting it, but as you walk through the workflow, as you move from tab to tab, the previous tab's work automatically saves, but it's always safe to come up and save in the top right before you exit if you're not able to sit, finish, and submit the application in one setting. Just getting started in this application, obviously a few things just to highlight is the tooltips are relevant around important data elements as you move through the platform. So those are there. And then the rest of the answers, if there is more than one option as an answer, it will show up in a drop down. So for instance, this affiliate question, yes or no. And you'll see I've taken the time just to go ahead and fill out the application so you guys don't have to watch me spend all the time filling it out, but I'm going to highlight the different sections and things to look out for as you walk through this application. So I get into this, obviously have the different drop downs for the different business types. Obviously I've chosen a sole proprietorship in this example, but depending upon your business type, it'll drive the rest of the application, some of the necessary data elements. Obviously drop down EIN or SSN. I'm a sole prop, I've got an EIN, I'm going to provide that. DBA or trade name, first name, last name, and very interesting here. So we have the NACES code lookup being pulled back in from the SBA directory. I will able to type in my industry type, and when I do that, it'll pull through the NACES code. So you guys know this is a very important number because anything that starts with a 7-2 will in the second draw scenario, we'll have that multiplier of 3.5 times their average monthly payroll versus every other NACES code that does not start with 7-2 will have that 2.5 times multiplier. So very important to type in your industry type, have it pull through the NACES code, because that'll drive that calculation that you'll see as we move forward. Primary contact information, date of establishment, obviously is very important. Was this business established before Jan 1, 2020? You'll see later in the application that the process and procedure around the revenue test is driven off the date of establishment. So need to be certain to get that correct. Does it meet the SBA size standards for that second draw scenario? And then we have a table of the size standards to assist in the process. So going down, the rest of the information's relatively straightforward. Business address, you'll see we have a lookup feature, which will pull through the address, business phone, email, and I get into the ownership section. Because the sole prop obviously is 100% owned by one person, we're not going to force that data element. Is this a person or a business? Obviously this is a person. I'm going to give my social security number in the drop down. Get down, first name, last name, title, and once again providing the address for the owner. And then the demographics field, title, and then the drop downs around the other questions around the demographics. So I move forward to the next page in the application. We're going, as you guys know, the SBA wants you to forecast use of proceeds. You have different choices here, and effectively you can check on the box and fill in the data elements. Obviously, you guys know the rules around PPP is payroll of 60% or greater. And then the other choices that you're able to choose, put in a number for your forecasted use of proceeds. And then as I get into the application, the real question becomes, is this a first draw loan? In other words, did you get a PPP loan in 2020. If you did receive a PPP loan previously in 2020, this would be a second draw. And you'll see you have the different, is this a first, excuse me, did you receive a PPP loan during the first draw? So my answer to my question is yes, I did receive a PPP loan during the first draw. And so therefore, this is my second draw scenario. And when I answer yes, that I do have an existing loan, it's going to populate the SBA. I'm going to need to put the SBA PPP number. So this is very important. This is not your bank loan number. This is the SBA PPP number. So the SBA provides a 10-digit loan number. Need to be certain to have that data element correct. The first draw loan amount. So how much was my first PPP loan amount? And then which lender did I get that first loan through? Going down to the revenue test, obviously there's a few different scenarios here around the revenue test based on my date of establishment. So my date of establishment was before Jan 1, 2020. And if that's the case, then I have two different choices that I can choose from the revenue test. I get to choose quarter versus quarter, 2019 versus 2020. So I can take second quarter of 2019 versus second quarter of 2020, or I can take an annual look. So if my business is was established before Jan 1, 2020, then I can look at it on an annual basis. So I'll be able to compare annual over annual. If my business was formed between Jan 1, 2020 and Feb 15, 2020, then I get to choose first quarter of 2020 against any other quarter, the second, third, or fourth quarter of 2020. So if my business is established Jan 1 to 20 to Feb 15 to 20, I get to choose quarter 1, 2020 versus any other quarter in 2020. But this was a second draw loan for me. I was established before Jan 1, 2020, and I'm going to choose second quarter 2019 versus second quarter 2020. Obviously, the average monthly payroll, this is a calculation that needs to be done outside the platform where you enter in that average monthly payroll as a final number. Number of employees, if there's rules around eligibility on employee headcount. Second draw, 300 or less. First draw is 500 or less. And then we'll calculate the average loan amount times your multiplier. So as we talked about in that first page, that NACES code, anything that begins with a 7.2, hospitality will get a 3.5 times multiplier and result in the net loan amount. Anything, the NACES code that doesn't begin in 7.2 will have a 2.5 times multiplier to calculate that loan amount. And something very important here you'll see as we move through this, because this loan is less than 150, there's certain guidelines around performing that revenue test, providing that supporting documents to your lender during origination. So if your loan is less than 150, and you'll see this when we get to the supporting documents, you're not required to. Now, some lenders may require that you provide supporting documents around this revenue reduction during origination if your loan is less than 150. But that's lender by lender scenario. So you'll need to check with your lender on that. If your loan is above 150, you will be required to provide supporting document around your revenue test during origination. If this was a first draw scenario, so I did not receive a PPP loan during 2020, and this is my first loan, I will have the drop down here, and then all of a sudden, obviously, as you know, the revenue test is not applicable. Also, in the first draw, meaning this is my first PPP loan, there is no increased multiplier for hospitality. The one other thing that sort of sticks out is the number of employees can grow from 300 to 500. So let me go back to my scenario of a second draw loan. Let me put in my SBA PPP number and loan amount and USA Bank. Provide my revenue reduction again, second quarter 2019 versus second quarter 2020. And let me proceed through the application. So the next is the eligibility page. Really, the SBA guidelines lay out certain criteria for eligibility. The answer is yes, no. You need to answer those according to your own personal scenario. Obviously, is the principal place of residence all employees in the U.S., yes or no? Drop down. And then the next question, is this an SBA, excuse me, is this a franchise? And so if you are a franchise, you can choose yes, and we'll populate the franchise directory from the, and I'll come down a little bit, from the SBA franchise directory. Let me just use Jersey Mike's as an example. And we'll pull through the SBA franchise code just to make it a little bit easier for the lender and the borrower in the application, because that data is necessary when delivering to the SBA. So I'm going to go back. My example was not a franchise, and I'll go back. I was a sole prop in a restaurant business, and I'll go. And the next tab is the supporting documentation, and this is completely driven off your individual business type. So there are different requirements for LLC, CS, anything that's not a Schedule C filer is going to have required documentation that will be different. Obviously, if you're a Schedule C filer, that's self-employed, sole prop, things of that nature, your supporting documents are going to be different. So you need to be able to communicate to the lender, maybe even before you begin the application, to understand what's going to be required from a supporting documentation before you enter the platform. So the supporting document, we effectively, I've already uploaded 2 documents, but I'll show you how this works. Effectively, when you land, every box will be 0 of 1 with a red X. And the supporting document feature here, you can come, you'll name the supporting document type, provide a item name, and then you will be able to upload from your computer and upload. But I want to show you something real quick before I choose that upload feature. So let's say that I did not upload supporting payroll documentation, which will be used to validate my average monthly payroll amount. Let's say I try to proceed with submitting the application. You'll see that it will create an error and drive me back. So the application makes you submit a complete application, which is very important, just because your lender can approve an incomplete application, and because the SBA just won't accept it from them. So the platform is going to allow you to have a complete, at least from a data. The lender still has to do a lot of verification and validation on their side, but as far as moving forward and proceeding and submitting this to the lender, the platform's going to attempt to get every data element and supporting document needed to drive that to the lender. So I need a payroll documentation. I'm going to come here. I'm going to ask, name this payroll. I'm going to name the document payroll. I'm going to grab just a dummy file from my computer, and I will upload that file. And now you'll see I have a green check. Important to, depending upon your underlying business type, to make sure that you have the required, required supporting documents going to your lender. So I'll come to the summary page. It'll expose my expected PPP loan amount for this next draw, whether that's a first draw scenario or a second draw scenario. And then this is very important. So we're going to capture the signer. So in this platform, DocuSign is embedded for convenience. So you can sign via e-signature, both the 2483, basically the application, SBA application that will come back from your lender through email, and then ultimately the loan closing docs. So all the paperwork we've automated through DocuSign for convenient e-signature. And what we're doing is we're capturing who is going to sign the documents. So the owner, the principal, so you'll name signer name, signer title, and signer email. And these 3 data elements need to be certain that these are correct, because it's going to populate DocuSign, and to get a successful delivery, to make the documents populate correctly, we need this. And then signer birth date, obviously we have the lookup. You can perform the birth date lookup, driver's license, passport, state ID, ID number, what state was it issued by, issue date, expiry date. So you'll be able to come here, accept terms, and submit application. Good luck with your application process. Hope it goes very well.